Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Broadway Jets YouTube channel. You'll know me from Twitter as NYJ Mike. I'm joined as always by the master of receipts, NYJ Matt, and today we have a very special guest. It's Richie from Jets Media. Richie is one of the best YouTubers, best content creators out there. I'm sure if you follow us, you already follow Richie, but we're delighted to have him on. We're going to do a little snake draft, top 5 most underrated Jets players that we can think of. So we'll each end up with a roster of 5 dudes. We'll do a snake draft. It's going to be a ton of fun, and we'll debate about it later on the internet.
Richie, welcome to the program.
What's up, guys? Always a pleasure to hop on the channel. You guys are doing your thing over here on the Broadway Jets YouTube channel. I'm loving it. Been following the podcast for a while. Of course, been following you guys on Twitter since I started Twitter. So thank you guys for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I'm excited, baby. A draft of the underrated Jets. You guys are really creative. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, and listen, it's hard to quantify what underrated means. You know, a guy could be underrated in terms of maybe a teammate outshined him, or underrated in terms of the entire NFL in Jet circles. So we'll give our reasoning as we go. Matt, usually I get the first pick. I think if you want to take the first pick here, you can get it. Richie said he was prepared for the third pick. We tried to be respectful, give our guest the first pick. He declined.
Mike,
Hey,
you
man.
can go one. You can
I
go one.
one
And I have written down who I think you're going to take with the first pick.
with the first overall pick in this weird draft of underrated people. NYJ Mike selects David Harris, the hitman, a long-term Jet. And I think David Harris is underrated in NFL circles. The fact that he never made a Pro Bowl is ridiculous. The guy was a second-team All-Pro once, 2009. He was tied for the league lead in AV in that season when the Jets had a terrific defense. The leader of many terrific defenses. The Jets were known, obviously, throughout his tenure for being a defensive team. He was part of those early teams that were good with Chad Pennington, and then with Brett Favre, the Sanchez years. 2015, he's still there. So I'm going to go with David Harris as my number 1 pick.
Hard to argue with
Great
it.
pick.
Hard to argue with it. Obviously, we don't love that he ended his career in New England, as well as some other people that may be drafted
Too many
later.
Jets went to New England late. Too many.
Yeah. David Harris, it's a good pick. That's not where I had you going, if I'm being honest. I thought you were going a different player. You'll probably take that guy in the second round, but I'm going way back. And during COVID, we had pretty good Jets knowledge from 2000 to 2022. But during COVID, I went back and watched like a ton of old games, and I fell in love with one guy that is just never talked about. He is a Ring of Honor member, but never really addressed. It's Larry Grantham. This guy was on the New York Titans and played all 12 years, a forever Jet. One of the only 3 people that were on the Titans that were a part of the Super Bowl winning team. 5-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. He had 8.5 sacks in 1964. This guy was just a monster on the field. He is in the Ring of Honor, so it feels kind of off to give him that underrated title. But give me a guy who played his 12 years for the team and won a Super Bowl. I think we need some more respect for LG number 60.
I like it. Go way back.
Mike, you don't like it?
I love it. I think it's a great one because you're right. No one talks about him at all. Ring of Honor guy, one of the leaders of that Super Bowl winning team, should probably get more love. Think about some other teams like the Mets teams that win in 1916 or 1986. I feel like you hear more about these legendary guys than you do with the Jets. You hear Maynard and Namath, but not too much else.
True.
Richie, you got 2 picks coming up, man.
All right, back-to-back picks for your boy. Let's go. So the first pick I got, well, technically the third pick, is he's not underrated amongst Jets fans. I think he's more underrated amongst the NFL scope. I'm taking my man who I grew up loving, and I actually took a picture with him at the Flight 22 premiere. That's Jericho Cotchery. Jericho Cotchery, growing up, when I first got into the Jets, he came to the Jets in 2004. I was 6 years old. He was my guy. Every single time the ball went his way, he brought it in. And if you look at his stats, I brought it up. He had 4 straight seasons from 2006 to 2009 of at least 800 yards. In 2007, he peaked with 1,100 yards in total with 82 catches. I just feel like people don't talk about him in the NFL world, but amongst us Jets fans, when we think of Jericho Cotchery, that's just a nostalgic player, especially someone that's like around my age, turning 25 soon. You know, it's kind of like your childhood in a way. He was the guy. So I'm taking Jericho Cotchery. And then my next pick, I'm going back to back. Now, this is someone that is very underrated. And I think he is the best player at this position in a while, right? And we're hopeful that someone will improve their game this upcoming season. And I'm taking Dustin Keller.
Nice.
Dustin Keller was so freaking good with those days of Mark Sanchez. And I just feel like he's a very underrated Jet. I mean, this is not someone that's going to be known as like an all-time great or a Ring of Honor or anything like that, right? But I just remember watching those games with Dustin Keller, who's a red zone monster. The ball always went his way. And I think he is the best Jets tight end since, like, I mean, who's a better tight end?
Other than Mickey Schuller, there's really nobody. He led the Jets in receiving yards in 2011. That's a great pick. I always felt that way about Keller. You know, you go back and watch some of these games. Everyone's talking about Santonio Holmes and Braylon Edwards and LT, and then all of a sudden it's like Dustin Keller 8 yards, Dustin Keller 15 yards, bang, 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 sick catch in the AFC Championship game. He was great in the Super Bowl. And to your point about Cotchery too, Cotchery is one of 4 Jet players ever with 280 catch seasons, and he always seemed to bring his best against our rival Patriots. So
he did.
2 good contemporary guys. That's a nice start for Mr. Ritchie. And then Matt goes back to you.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing, both of those guys are steady and consistent. You knew what you were going to get with them, sure hands, and good locker room guys. So, Richie, it's hard to beat those 2 picks. I'm going to go with a fan favorite in our generation, too, is Sean Ellis.
Nice.
Nice.
Again, 2000 to 2010, almost a forever Jet outside of one season.
Once you said the David Harris, then you're going to pick
73 and a half career sacks. The coolest thing about Sean Ellis is I feel like he always played his best games in the biggest moments and against the Patriots. If you look at his game logs against the Patriots, he was a disruptor. You'll always see videos of a strip sack of Brady. The guy was just a great, great forever Jet. The video of him running out with the American flag still sticks in my memory. Good. And I think a video was on Twitter of him beating up a guy during a traffic stop. So the guy is still in the news. Give me
throwing snowballs at people.
Yeah. So I'll take him at my second round pick.
Just fucking winding up and launching snowballs at Seahawks fans. He knew the Tariq Woolen sauce debates were going to happen like 12 years ago. Those guys were 7 years old.
The Tariq Woolen and sauce debates that will end in year 2.
Dude, I have a guy in my DM still. The one guy that I called out the other night. He's like, just be honest. Kenneth Walker is better than Garrett Wilson. I'm like, dude, you gotta chill. Like, he's trying to find any angle, but the debates keep happening. And Mike, I think you got back-to-back picks here.
Back-to-back, like I'm on the cover of Lethal Weapon. I got one. I think one of the, and this is statistically backed up. One of the most underrated players in the history of football is Leon Washington.
Oh,
Washington! I don't know if people realize this.
Still my pick.
The career kick return touchdown leader in the history of football is Cordero Patterson with 9. Leon Washington is 8, and he had a 9th touchdown that he got tackled on the 1-yard line on a 95-yard return. So I think you can make an argument that Leon Washington, actually Hester might have 9. I think Cordero Patterson is 8. But Leon Washington is arguably a top 3 return player in the history of the sport. He was a terrific Jet. It's a shame that he got hurt in 2009. It also paved the way a little bit for Sean Green to make a big impact, which he did in the playoffs. But another guy who went to the Patriots later, which is nauseating. But Leon Washington, coaching with the Jets, just, one of the most beloved Jets players, I think, around the Jets community. But people don't mention him when they're talking about the best returners in the sport. And then I got another pick. I'm going to go way back, and I'm going to go with George Sauer, who was the receiver alongside Don Maynard. And I think he gets overlooked because of this. Don Maynard, the Hall of Famer. But Sauer, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, 3 1,000-yard seasons in the 60s, averaged 90 yards per game in the playoffs in his career with the Jets. Obviously won a Super Bowl in 1968-69 season. So I'm going to give some love to the older crowd, George Sauer, who I think gets overshadowed by Don Maynard. And it just very similar players. Maynard just played for a longer time. Sauer also led the league in catches one year. Terrific player.
It's a great pick. And Sauer's most notable game is the Super Bowl where he had 8 catches for 133 yards. The game that Maynard got shut out, playing on a bad hamstring. A lot of coverage from the Colts went to Maynard, and Sauer took advantage of that.
He
So
could have
8
been
for
MVP.
133.
Yeah, could have been MVP.
A good
And Leon
pick.
Washington, just to add on that real quick, I mean, I'll never forget the memories I had with when he was on the Jets. I had I don't know, maybe it was a middle school, maybe elementary, probably middle school. And I had a teacher who was a diehard Jets fan, and it was the 2000, I forgot what season it was, but he made us do Jets chants like before class. And like that was during the Leon Washington era. And like my teacher like raved about him. And like I loved him at the time too. And I just like whenever I think of Leon Washington, I just remember that era of being in school. Like I don't know how old I was, probably in middle school. And like my teacher was just an insane fanatic Jets fan. And he just like forcing everybody, even people that don't like sports, like girls, like guys, like nerds, no one cares about sports besides like me and like a couple of other kids. And we're doing like J-E-T-S. Like he wanted to make sure the whole hallway heard. And like he's like louder. Like he wanted like his faculty all to hear the chant. It was hilarious. But I don't know why Leon Washington just reminded me of that memory in my brain.
I get some parents now who are like, you can't tell my kids what to chant. Don't teach our kids.
Oh, I love Leon Washington. That's hilarious.
What a terrific player. And then we go back to Mr. NYJ Matt.
Yeah, this is a tough one here. I'm in between like 5 guys, and the first one I want, it doesn't feel good enough to say he's underrated, but I still think he is. He's a Hall of Famer. Winston Hill played for 14 years, and he played 12 full complete seasons without an injury in a row. The most steady left tackle, and then moved to right tackle in 1971. 8 Pro Bowlers, or 8 Pro Bowls attended. You got to make the argument he could have his number retired. That's 75, which is worn by AVT now. I don't know what else this guy could do. Played every snap, every down. Was DeBrickashaw before DeBrickashaw. I just feel like this guy gets well known in like small Jet circles. But if I pull like an 18-year-old Jet fan off the street, I say Winston Hill, he has no idea who I'm talking about. So just underrated, even though he's a Hall of Famer, truly in my mind.
You're right. He's not talked about as much. Tough offensive line sometimes gets overlooked, but the Jets fans in general love the offensive linemen. You know, hear about the Mawais and the Bricks and Mangolds. So it's nice to give some love to that older generation. Terrific player.
And a Super Bowl champion, of course. Those individuals are immortalized in Jets world. It truly is so special to be a part of that team. And now I drafted 2 guys that were part of it, and I might draft another one.
I love it. Well, I'm going the same route of the trenches. Now, this player is not underrated by Jets fans. I think the NFL world has to appreciate this man. You guys probably know who I'm talking about. That's DeBrickashaw Ferguson, man. I mean, how beneficial would DeBrick be right now on this team today? I mean, the man's an Iron Man. Did not miss a snap throughout his entire career. And the reason why I want to bring him up is because when you think of like, you know, the past 15 years or so, and you think of the Jets offensive line that was so good in that 09 and 10 season, everyone thinks of Nick Mangold and DeBrick together. But I feel like Nick Mangold is the guy that is more of, you know, the Jet that's still like around. He's still working for the Jets. He has his own podcast with Mark Sanchez. He's on Twitter active. DeBrick is just doing his own thing in retirement. We don't hear anything about him. And I feel like, you know, amongst the NFL land, I mean, when you're a left tackle and you do not miss a freaking snap throughout your entire career, and he's also a Long Island kid. He played against my high school, and he literally grew up like 10 minutes from me. And I just feel like DeBrickashaw Ferguson, just because of how solid he was, not only on the field, but his leadership. He was a great locker room guy. He's just like a prototypical guy that you want on your team for 10 years. And I think DeBrickashaw Ferguson deserves all the love, if not more. Obviously, I don't think Jets fans need to continue to show him love because we continue to do that. I don't think we underrate him at all as a fan base. But I think from the NFL perspective, he's very underrated as a great offensive tackle.
He should have made more than 3 Pro Bowls. You're right. You're 100% right. He made the 3 Pro Bowls in those middle years when the Jets were good, 09, 10, 11. But you can make an argument. 2008, he was terrific. 2015, I mean, even if, you know, if you want to say the Jets didn't have success, whatever, but he's obviously playing all those games, not missing any snaps. I mean, it's a good one. Similar guy to David Harris, where just was so good for the Jets for so many years, but doesn't get such outside love.
And he's the first guy I remember the Jets drafting because I'm in 5th grade and the Sports Illustrated cover comes out of Matt Leinart photoshopped in a Jet uniform. And I'm like, I want Matt Leinart. I want a quarterback. Or Vince Young would be so cool, but he was going to go to Tennessee. And when they take a guy named DeBrickashaw Ferguson, 5th grade NYJ Matt is ready to kill someone. And I just don't understand the importance of that pick. And it's very cool. The first guy I remember them drafting and really being like involved in that draft process. And then you fast forward 16 years and he's in the Ring of Honor. So very, very cool pick. And Richie, I'm starting to be a little jealous of your board. If we tweet out the graphic, you're going to win by a landslide at this point. I got to get more modern on my end. But Richie, you have one more pick.
Oh, this is my last and final pick?
I think you have one more after.
One more this round.
Yeah, this is a tough because looking at my board, it's like, where do I want to go with this?
Yeah.
Because I have some people on my board that's like controversial. If like, really, he's not underrated. Like he's great, but like, I don't know. You could say he's underrated in this perspective. So it is kind of interesting. You know what? I'm going to show love to one of my favorite Jets, and you can say what you want about him. I will never forget looking up if I can buy his jersey. And I couldn't buy his jersey.
They don't make Kimbrel Tompkins jerseys, Richard.
I remember looking up his jersey, trying to find it while he was on the Jets, and I couldn't find it because he was that underrated. And may him rest in peace as well. That's Joe McKnight.
Nice.
Oh,
Joe McKnight, I'll never forget, man. I think it was Monday Night Football when he had that return, or I could be wrong. Yeah, yep. Like I'll never forget watching that game. Like I don't know how old I was. I don't know what year it was exactly. It's slipping my mind. But like that return, and like was it 2012?
2012.
And like even whenever he got carries, he was like the 3rd string running back. And I always was screaming at my TV, give this man carries. He's not just a kick returner. Like he's not just a kick return specialist. He deserves the ball. He deserves the ball. So my man Joe McKnight, you know, rest in peace. He was when he passed away, man, it really hit me because I was like, damn, like I never forget looking up if I could buy a Joe McKnight jersey number 25. Like I loved him and I couldn't find his jersey, and it really made me feel like, damn, like one of my favorite players no one appreciates. So when you guys asked me to get on and give my top 5 underrated Jets, I had to show love to Joe McKnight just because of I'll never forget just looking up his jersey and him being one of my favorite Jets during that season.
It's a shame what happened. It's a traffic stop and just terrible. But you're right, it was a very good gadget player. I remember there was week 17, 2010, the Jets had already clinched their spot in the playoffs, and they played the Bills, and they gave Joe McKnight like 32 carries. He had like 180 yards. Like, man, little Richie was right.
And he's honored well throughout Jets lore too, which is really cool. Like Woody Johnson will consistently tweet on his birthday or around the time of the anniversary of his death. The clips, the block against Dallas, right? Like all that cool stuff. So it's a good pick. And I think I'm turning it up.
Well in the graphic too.
Yeah, it's going to play well in the graphic.
Damn.
Here's a tough one for me. I said I had to go more modern. I just can't. There's a guy on my board that I can't let go by, and it's Kyle Clifton, the linebacker.
Ooh.
True lifetime Jet. Again, 12 years, a lifetime Jet. He had 4 years of 160 tackles or more. And 1 year, I think it was in 1990, 199 tackles. One away from 200. Kyle Clifton would be my guy here. I've seen like 3 games in that era that like you go back and you watch random games that are on YouTube, and the guy's a monster on the field. So give me Kyle Clifton with my 4th overall pick. Mike, any heartburn around the Kyle Clifton pick?
No, I was actually going to take a different Jets linebacker from that era, but I'm not going to. I'll save it for the honorable mentions unless Richie takes him. But Kyle Clifton, statistically, you know, and he played on some of those late 80s teams a lot of the time in the 90s. The Jets were pretty competitive in the early 90s. It's an era that is not really looked at. They went 8-8 in 91, made it. 92, 93, you're playing close to 500 balls. So very interesting. And again, you're right. It's not a player or an era that's really talked about too much. So, you know, it'd be nice for Jets Nation and the entire NFL to show some love to these guys.
I love how Matt is just going full, like all time, like back in the 80s in the Super Bowl. Like, you're really honoring the Jets history. And your board is going to be all like the real Jets legends. You know, I'm picking all the guys I experienced like with my own eyes, but you're talking about all the guys that historically, you know, real New York Jets. I'm picking guys that are on the team for like a year or two, and I'm like, yeah, I love this guy. He's underrated. So
Yeah, and my final pick will be meaningful to me that I guarantee will not be drafted.
I'm fucking
But
taking it.
but here's the cool thing about the guys that are like a little bit older. When you start looking at Jets history, a lot of people talk about the doom and gloom, how bad the 70s were, how bad the 90s were. But you can go back and say, hey, look, we had some cool players during that time. And being a lifetime Jet, I think is the coolest thing that you could do. Like, it's tough for the guys that do a year elsewhere at the end of their career. Like Winston Hill, I think, was with the Rams his final year. But when you play like a solid 12 years for one team, and rather than going to a team, you're honorable like Kyle Clifton and like, yeah, I'm out and I'm retiring a Jet. I love it. So Richie, I'm hoping that for my final pick coming up in a minute, you'll see the more modern approach, a guy that meant a lot to me that I saw play. But Mike, I think you got back to back here to wrap it up for your
I
end.
got back to back to wrap up my 5. First, I'm gonna take another guy from that era, from the Kyle Clifton era, the cornerback James Hasty. James Hasty is my dad's favorite player. Played 7 years with the Jets. He's third in team history in interceptions. He missed one game his rookie season and then played it out. He ended up making a couple Pro Bowls with the Chiefs later on, but you could make the argument that he should have been a Pro Bowler with the Jets. Terrific player, didn't get hurt, tackled well, vicious, just, that number one corner, and he was on the Jets for a long time. James Hasty, not talked about a lot in Jet circles, should be talked about more in my opinion. That's my number 4 pick. And then my 5th pick, I was going to take another DB from that era, but I'm going to go with Lavernius Coles, the receiver. Lavernius Coles has some underrated Jet stats. He is the 3rd most receptions in a single season in Jets history with 89. He's 5th in Jets history in single season receiving yards with 1,264, multiple 1,000-yard seasons, and multiple eras. Again, he's part of that early 2000s. Then he went to the Redskins. Then he came back to the Jets. He played with Chad, part of playoff teams. He played with Brett Favre. Terrific Jet. And statistically, he was probably better than Santana Moss. He was better than Jericho Cotchery. So it's an interesting guy that, usually hear those guys named. Right. Not in the draft like this. You could take Jericho Cotchery in this draft first, but in a just straight up NFL receiver, I think Coles is a better player and doesn't get talked about as much.
Both good picks, both good back-to-back picks there. Santana Moss on my board will not be the pick. When I found out that you can do a spin move in football, I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and Santana Moss would do that, and I'd be like, holy shit, as a kid.
You just can't. You're not. It's a penalty.
Yeah, But here's a guy that he only played for the Jets for 3 years, and it's the era that I remember most. Give me Dwight Lowry. Give me the corner with the long white sleeves. Give me the guy outside of the Revis Cromartie combo in 2010. In 2018, his rookie year, he had 16 passes defended and 5 forced fumbles. When you go back and watch like the All 22, not the All 2020, the game live that you can watch on NFL Game Pass, 2-hour video, you can watch the entire game. When I did that in COVID and rewatched 2009, 2010, Dwight Lowry just kept making plays on the field. And Revis deserves all the credit. But when you shut down Revis, right, he's on one side of the field. You don't throw to him. You got to throw to someone else. And Dwight Lowry was always there. And he's a big part for why that was number 1 defense in the NFL. Only 3 years, but give me a little Dwight Lowry credit. He's the guy I'm picking at 5. I have a lot on my board, but he's the guy that stood out to me.
We had a couple of fun pick sixes. I remember one against the Bears, one against the Vikings in the Monday Night Football game against Brett Favre to seal that game.
Yeah,
good player. Started a number of playoff games.
Yeah, and he ended his career playing a lot too. He after the Jets, he went to Jacksonville, played a full season as a starter in Atlanta and Indy, and in a bunch of places. So I'll end it with Dwight Lowry, and I think we have one more pick to go with Richie.
Yeah, that was a great pick. I mean, you bringing him up is just bringing me back to today's Jets. I don't know why. Like Sauce, Reed, Carter II. I'm liking it. I'm liking what we got today, baby. We're getting back to that era, baby. We just got to beef up that offensive line, and we'll be good. But looking at my board for my final pick, this is tough. Lavernius Coles was going to be my next pick.
Oh, so really? I took 2 of your guys?
Yeah, it's all good, though. It's all good. You took my guys, Leon Washington. You took Lavernius Coles. Now, this guy I probably shouldn't take. No, I'm not going to go with him. You know who I'm going to take, who's still in the league today, but he's not on the Jets, and he's a star somewhere else. That I really, at the time, said we cannot let this man walk.
Is his initials the same thing as giant boobs?
No.
DD.
Not Demario Davis? Okay, sorry, continue.
Oh, yeah. It is Demario Davis. Giant boobs. I was like a GB.
No.
Double D.
I got it.
But yes, it is Demario Davis because at the time, he was so underrated by who? The Jets.
Yes,
The
nice.
Jets organization are the ones that underrated the man, which is why I had him on my list. We as a fan base didn't underrate him. Obviously, the Saints didn't underrate him, but the organization underrated that man, and it still hurts me today, but it's all good because we got CJ Mosley, who's coming off an all, second team season, and I can't complain because CJ's a beast. But just seeing Demario Davis being a top linebacker for the New Orleans Saints, I'll never forget that offseason telling all my friends, and I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time, so I had no one to talk to besides my friends. They got to re-sign Demario Davis. He's my guy. He's everywhere, sideline to sideline. He's a leader. He's only going to get better. He's still young. You got to re-sign him. When we let him walk, I was like, that was the biggest mistake we could have made. And unfortunately, I was right. But still, big shout out to Demario Davis. He's killing it. And that's my final pick.
It's a good one. And dude, it's weird because the first go through with Demario Davis on the Jets, he was good. If you look at the stats in 2017 with the Jets, his second stint before he went to the Saints, it's like he has the same numbers. He had 1 billion tackles. He had 5 sacks. He played pretty solid pass coverage. Like, I don't know what they saw, and then Matt and I actually spoke about this before they signed Avery Williamson instead because he was a little bit younger. I think Matt talked when your agent came to your class or something.
Yeah. So my college professor is Justin Tucker's agent, the kicker, and he made bank with the new deal. And he's known for getting kickers, and that was the moneymaker for him. So he had a lot of good connections, and he invited one of the Jets pro scouts. He's still with the team. He's on the One Jets Drives episodes, like with Rex Hogan. They'll cut to this random guy. I think he's the director of college personnel now. And he came to my class in 2018, and I asked him, I said, Demario Davis had a career year. You guys let him go. He had a good year at the Saints. Why move off him? And he said, we think about that move a lot. We went with Avery. Mike called out younger. We thought that it was an outlier year for Demario. And at that point, Demario Davis was good. And we're like, okay. And then you look back now, 4 straight Pro Bowls and some all pro years in there as well. So it was cool. I got to ask the guy, the director of Jet Scouting about it, but Mikey called out the year that he had, that bounce back year after the trade. Was it for Calvin Pryor straight up? Was it for like a 7th round pick to the Browns? It's like a weird trade that they did.
Yeah, something strange.
I think it was like
Pryor.
a 7th round pick. And
When
then
the
Calvin
Jets got
Pryor
him
was moved in that as well. But hey, we got a really good draft here. I think all 15 of those guys are underrated. Mike, any parting words? I see you getting ready to go here.
No, I want to hear some honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions. Richie,
I have
yours.
a bunch of good ones, but yeah.
You know who I was debating drafting? Nick Folk. But I couldn't go through with it just because he's like a Patriot today, and he has been a Patriot for a while. So I couldn't like put him on my list of like all-time Jets, But like I just remember because we're still looking for a kicker. Greg Zuerlein, shout out Greg the Leg. He did a good job. But Nick Folk.
He could have just been the kicker for like 10 more years. You're right. Weird.
I have Pat Leahy on my draft board.
Yes.
I was going to, 17 years as a kicker for the Jets, 74 to 91 on my draft board. We'll be quick, though, with the honorable mentions. We have 2.5 minutes before the Zoom runs out.
I'll do a couple. We had, I had Calvin Pace, so I think you thought I was going to draft.
I thought you were taking him 1-1. I'm shocked he went undrafted.
Quentin Coples.
Coples? I don't know if he's underrated. I think he is a little bit underrated because people say he was horrible. He wasn't horrible. He just wasn't worth his pick. So that's interesting.
He's not on my board. He just when you said that name, it popped up my brain.
Yeah, Brandon. I had Mo Lewis. If you take Mo Lewis's best year in terms of each like counting stat, he would have had he would have had 158 tackles, 10 sacks, 4 picks, 2 pick sixes. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All Pro. But I think he does get recognition with the Jets. I
do want to show you guys, for anyone that's watching this video all the way to the end, you guys would love this. It's the Jets history through Daily News all the way from.
Send me that link.
Written by Manish Mehta.
I got this for Christmas, actually.
Yeah.
What a gift.
And it's got my name on the front. Presented to Richard Malora, baby.
That is
what a gift.
All the Daily News, all the way from, and you can read like what they were writing, like back in through all Jets history. This is the Super Bowl. And then all the way, the most recent.
What do they got?
This is hilarious. It's the Mike White game, from
Oh,
last
that's great.
year.
That
So
is
I thought
awesome.
you guys would love this because I know you're big time into the Jets history.
Oh
But
my
I
god,
had to show you guys this.
I
that is
love it.
very, very cool.
Mike,
The
could I
only
throw?
other, yeah,
Could I?
go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
we got
throwing two
left.
at you. Matt Snell, 3-time Pro Bowler,
Yeah,
Super Bowl champion, and in the Super Bowl, 30 rushes for 120 yards and a touchdown, 4
could have been
catches for
MVP.
40 yards.
Yeah.
Also, Jerry Philbin in that same era, 2-time All-Pro, 4 straight 10-sack years. The guy was a stud.
Man
And
went
again,
way back.
he had 14 in the Super Bowl 1968 year.
I gotta name two more guys. Darrell Ray, terrific safety in the early '80s, had a 98-yard pick six in the '82 wild card game. I don't know if I said Thomas Jones before. Brandon Moore, Damian Woody, terrific Jet
Thomas
lineman.
Jones.
Thomas Jones, man, I fucking love Thomas Jones.
Sean Green.
Sean Green is a good one. God, I love the
Jeremy
Jets.
Curley.
J.
Keep
Cole, that was a
throwing
good
him.
one. I tweeted out today, like, who's the most underrated Jet? A lot of people say Curly.
He's on my board. I was really considering drafting him.
You have a very likable, playable.
Put
board.
Jeremy Curley on my honorable mentions board.
I think we're gonna run out of time, but Richie, thank you so much for coming.
Of course. Appreciate you guys having me on, man. Go Jets.
All right,
Oh,
talk to you guys soon.
Peace out.